have Rob Weidenfeld and the Better Angels do a presentation and work for us and see how we can bridge the gap. And then on the 29th of January, we're going to be hearing from Pro Kids, Mary Kay Kohler, thanks to Dot for that connection. And so that is our program for January. As we promised, we will be doing this 4 weeks in advance, so that is your January calendar. We will get that up. I sent that to Peter this morning and to Alberta this morning, so that we'll get that in the newsletter and up online, so you know what's coming up in the future. So, right now, where'd Alberta go? Oh, there you are. So I'm going to turn this over to Alberta, and here you go.
Just want to review that next week is Christmas Day. We will not be meeting. The next Tuesday, I'm sorry about this, is New Year's Day, and we will not be meeting. The decision was made probably last year that we would not be meeting on Christmas or New Year's Day. Sorry, I'm sorry, really. I apologize in advance.
Maybe you can find something else to do.
Find something else to do on Christmas and New Year's Day, but we will be meeting the following Tuesday. That gives me a chance to go and see my children in San Diego, which is a really possible thing. There we go. I'm really looking forward to Bernadine Zenny of the Extinction Rebellion. I didn't know we were going to go extinct, but you know, if we're all like the current president, who knows what's going to happen.
He doesn't care because he says he's not going to be around anyway, so he doesn't care.
He doesn't care because he's not going to be around. Okay, there we go.
Now, as far as I'm concerned. The sooner the better.
My personal prediction is that he'll be out by March, when they threaten his kids with jail, and they'll all get out of jail free cards if he resigns. That's my personal prediction, but you know, that's just too hopeful. Too hopeful. We can.
For a pound in for pence, that's okay.
Oh no, Pence. They're going to get Pence because he was allowing things to go on during the transition where he was head. That's not going to work. I think that's why they were resisting Pelosi, because she may wind up being president.
No, it's President Pro Tem of the Senate. She could.
We could do worse than having Nancy Pelosi as president. Okay. I have a thank you here from the HJR 19, Attack on Direct Democracy. It was defeated. This is from the League of Women Voters. Because of your calls, your determination, and your support, thank you. Our mighty coalition of more than 90 organizations mobilized within hours, hand-delivering an opposition letter to HJR 19 to our state's leadership, and every major Ohio media market recognized that the League of Women Voters of Ohio as a leader in this opposition. If passed, HRJ 19 would have made direct democracy like fair districts nearly impossible. The League of Women Voters of Ohio called on you to act, and you did. You testified, called legislators, conducted media interviews, and posted social media calls for action. Thank you from the League of Women Voters. I don't know about you, but I get those letters all the time about writing letters, and I write the letter. I don't donate to all of those guys. Boy, I would go broke if I gave even $3 to everybody who asked me for $3. And I have to be very circumspect in how I spend my money. I'm retired, thank you very much. Bernadine Zenny, we're going to get back on January 8th, the Extinction Rebellion. I'm going to have to think about that. That sounds really interesting. Okay, so we have announcements. First of all, who do we have to make announcements? How about starting with Marlena? Where's Marlena? Why don't you start, Marlena? Here we go. Wait. Listen, if you're going to run for office, you better expect to announce at every meeting.
Hello again, happy Tuesday. I'm Marlena Brookfield, running for Cincinnati Public School Board, 11/5/2019. Remember that date, because we do have to vote. Local elections matter. We can't focus on 2020 until we get through 2019. Let's see, the campaign has had a really busy month. Started going to community councils. We've got, I believe, 6 or 7 scheduled for next month. So I'm making the rounds, talking to folks, making sure I hear what their concerns are and having that inform what I want to do on the board. So here we go into 2019.
It's happening, it's happening. Okay, other announcements. Here we go. Rob and Lori. Whoops. Here we go. Rob.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on what Katie already mentioned, that we are going to be doing a Better Angels presentation on January the 22nd here, and essentially it's going to be a little bit different from the normal format, because in order to do a Better Angels presentation, and many of you know of Better Angels, some of you have even been to a workshop, I believe, at least 1 or 2 of you. But having said that, the difference is going to be, I'm going to be inviting some Tea Party Republicans here. And so,
We've got tea.
and so that will be a very different kind of gathering. But, and I'm not exactly sure what format we'll pursue, but I will tell you it will be a very different kind of presentation. So I hope you will enjoy it. Also, there is going to be a meeting before then. I'm not exactly sure of the date. It's going to be in Lebanon. It's a regular Better Angels meeting, and some of you have expressed the desire to start a local chapter in Cincinnati, for which we would be very happy to get going. And if any of you want to know when the specifics of that meeting are, then contact me and I will let you know as soon as the date is set.
Now, what county are you from, Rob?
Well, I was living in Lebanon when Better Angels got started, but I'm now living in Montgomery.
What is
Okay.
it, Rob? What is it?
What is Better Angels?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you all knew. Better Angels is a group that was formed shortly after the election of 2016. It was put together by people that were very concerned about the hostility between Reds and Blues, particularly Trump supporters and solid blue Democrats. And one of the funders of this organization was Peter Yarrow, Peter, Paul, and Mary. And they decided to reach out. There was a man by the name of David Blankenhorn who was organizing it out of Washington. He knew somebody in South Lebanon who thought he could get some Reds and Blues together. And they contacted the chairs of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and they got a group of people together, and I was one of those early goers. And essentially what we did is we found a way to talk to each other, even though we had strong disagreements. The purpose of Better Angels is not to change anyone's mind. The purpose is to find common ground. And we use what Lincoln said in his first inaugural address, that we must address the better angels of our nature. And that's how the organization got its name. We've been meeting regularly, almost on a monthly basis. We have chapters now. It started in South Lebanon, Ohio, about 1.5 years ago, and there are now chapters in 50 states. So, if there are any other questions, I'd be glad to speak to people after the meeting.
There we go. Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you. Will you make sure that your information gets to Peter?
Yes, absolutely,
Make
I
sure
will.
that- So that gets into our newsletter.
I already am not understanding these first notes that I got here.
First notes, not understood. So whoever just gave her the first notes you gotta explain better.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Right
Here we go, Lori.
Hi, everyone. Is that all right? Everyone here?
Yeah.
I'm quickly mentioning that. Oh, all right. That's a little better. I have been asked to participate in a brainstorming session very soon, like the 28th of December, on behalf of the Ohio State Bar Association Judicial Administration and Legal Reform Committee. They're asking for help from the public as well as members of the association, the Bar Association, in coming up with a mission statement for the Legal Reform Committee and what might be the first project the committee undertakes for this coming year. I mentioned a couple things that might be of interest in addition to issue 1 that did not continue on, but there's something called the Collateral Consequences of Conviction Act, in which anyone convicted of a crime might be told what in the future they will or will not be able to do. That includes someone who might be considering plea bargaining and pleading guilty and what that means fully. There are other measures that we could really consider, like having a commercial division of our state courts that would be completely delegated to commercial matters and not necessarily having a full panoply of doctrinal matters, but so there'd be specialization and possibly improvement in our legal discussions. But if you have any interest, I will be happy to take an email. Thank you. Who might be next?
There we go.
I don't know if you all got an invitation to the first annual Democratic Party party on Wednesday at 6 o'clock or 6:30 at Ryan Messer's house. He's on the school board, lives in North Avondale on Marion Way. I don't have the actual
Is that for
address.
all of us? Any of us?
Anybody.
It's a
There
big
you
house.
go. It's a big house.
It's a huge house.
Everybody can come.
Yes.
You have to RSVP.
Yeah, you should already, well, there, I can send it to Peter later today, and then
Okay.
we can send it out. But,
Poor Peter.
right,
992 Marion Avenue.
it's Wednesday the 19th.
Wednesday the 19th.
6 to
This coming
9.
Wednesday.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. 6 to 8. 6 to 8. Here comes Deborah.
I snuck in here a little late, sorry about that. So, a very interesting thing happened at the State House these last 2 weeks up in Columbus. They had proponent testimony for House Bill 440, the single-payer healthcare bill. I did go on Wednesday, I gave oral testimony. Sid came with me, we were the very last to speak. And it was a great time. I'm not part of SPAN, but SPAN is very active and local here. And I do have contact numbers for their Southwest Regional Coordinator, and one of their folks came and spoke with us at our Move to Amend meeting on Sunday, and they're gonna join us and they're gonna be our speakers in January. But for anyone who's interested, if you get in touch with me, I can give you the contact numbers. They're going to meet outside and do a rally at both Shabbat's and Wenstrup's offices on January 3rd, because that's the first day that the legislators will be back in session. And so anyone interested in doing that, they would love to have you.
And you just got a card from Peter to write it all down.
That's right. Thank you so much.
There we go. Wait.
I'm loud enough.
No.
Okay, first of all, reminder, there's a pop-up gift shop in Mount Healthy. It's open on Saturday, well, only this Saturday and Sunday now, before Christmas. It's all handmade stuff, including my hats and my blankets. But lots of like cookies and jams and honey and just all kinds of stuff. So, and Mount Healthy is going to have their big holiday celebration on Saturday. The other thing is we have a women's march coming up in January. If anybody needs a hat, kind of let me know, because I have some already made, but I may stop making
You're
them.
talking pussy hats, right?
Yes. We don't call them that at the gift shop.
But Alberta loves to say it.
I know she does. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have.
There you go, thank you. Other announcements?
Baby love my frog hat this morning, she called.
Oh, good. Did the orange one fit?
I don't know yet. It's, the kid's 2
What are
weeks
they
old.
called in the gift shop?
Just hats. and you'd be surprised, people say, oh, they're so cute, that's so fashionable now. But they have no clue. But anyway, and I've also got like baby blankets over there, and Sid's got a stroller throw, but he's not got it with him today. But the stroller throws are small enough that you can use them on strollers and car seats and grocery carts, and they don't hang over and get caught in the wheels, and so and they're only $10. So that's my commercial for today. Thank you, and Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you, Merry Christmas to you. Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Laura Ann?
Things are already happening for 2020.
No.
Yes, they are.
Oh, good.
In any case, I just want to wish everybody here a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and have a great holiday season, one and all. I want to thank the people here, my fellow Democrats, my colleagues, and all those people who are going to vote for me for Congress in Congressional District 1 in 2020.
2020 is already here.
Should I decide to run?
Should she decide to run? There she goes. And we have somebody to keep it open. Yeah, should she decide. Okay, any other announcements?
How's that for being political?
How's that for, oh, you are definitely political, not a problem there.
I think you should definitely decide.
I will in about a year
We,
and a half.
okay, how are our announcements going? We've got announcements. Okay, that brings us to our speaker today. Our speaker is going to introduce himself. He is Bob Kelly, and he's going to tell us about himself and his program. And it sounds like we've got an exciting activity to do. I'm going to be, Dr. Weaver's going to be the ruler, is it? You're the third one. Who's the third one?
Ruler.
She's the ruler.
I'm the ruler.
I'm the advisor, and somebody else.
Hands in there.
Right, she's a narrator.
No election, no.
We got an activity to do today, folks, when it's coming down the line. And without further ado, for today, Bob Kelly.
Oh, okay. Okay. Everybody can hear me? Okay. Yeah, my name is Bob Kelly. Thanks for inviting me to speak at the luncheon because I'm dressing as a principal for the first time in 7 years. So I have to get everything out of the closet and brush it off. I'm usually running around in a sweatsuit because I work out 7 days a week. I walk my border collie quite a few miles a day to keep her happy, otherwise she barks at me all night. Yeah, I'm married. I'm going on 50 years, in fact. Got 3 daughters and 1 border collie. The border collie is the best behaved of the group. But I have a lifelong relationship, I guess, in some way with Democratic candidates, or my interest in Democrats. Of course, I grew up as a teenager at the time of John F. Kennedy. In fact, I wrote my senior theme in high school about JFK, who had been assassinated in my junior year. One of the great tragedies in a day and a time period, and as I look around the room, there's a lot of people probably in my age. Pardon me?
Louder.
Oh, louder. Wow. Okay, I'll hold it up there. I'm sorry. Usually, I rarely ever use a microphone. I've been told my voice is quite loud enough, at least the 10,000 or so students I've had in my career. My professional background includes working in inner city Chicago while I was a student at Northwestern University. Went to law school, never practiced law. 38 years as a Catholic and public school principal in Ohio. I retired about 7 years ago, and after a year of house projects that I've been putting off for about 20 years, taught part-time in an autistic center and tutored students in various subjects and test taking. I also consulted on various areas in special education. The Center for Social Emotional Learning was founded in 2014 by Louise Gomer Bangle. It's a nonprofit organization that provides interactive and engaging activities for students that help schools create respectful, nonviolent, and supportive environments. CSEL is a successor to the Center for Peace Education, which was also co-founded by Louise and operated from 1979 to 2009 here in Cincinnati, working with students and adults, and also some of the people in it and were involved. Ilyas Nasheed specifically was involved in a group of people that went over and worked in Seoul, Korea, teaching mediation to students and teachers over there. I think a district of 700 and some odd thousand kids, if I recall. I want you to listen to a story from one of my facilitators, who in fact operates at, works at Mount Healthy South, and Rob Weidenfeld and I both worked and retired from Mount Healthy City Schools. Okay, Tracy writes this to me. Let me tell you about a shy, withdrawn, lonely little boy who clung to his teachers this semester. For weeks, he walked around looking sad, never smiling, and told our facilitators that he had the blues. After a month, he became engaged in the classroom. He was less clingy with his teachers and more friendly, interacting with his classmates. Recently, we administered a required survey to our students, and who were told that the survey was anonymous. Despite that, he signed his name and wrote the following. One of the questions on the survey, there's a 6-part survey in which kids answer agree, strongly agree, whatever, and then they're given 2 questions, open-ended questions, to tell us a little bit more. When asked what he learned, he responded, teamwork. And then he wrote, thank you, Miss C and Miss J, for helping me feel better and not to feel sad from the blues. This is what we do and what motivates us at CSEL. It's developing the self-confidence, communication skills, and problem-solving skills in students. Our facilitators have backgrounds in education, counseling, psychology, and business, and hold various licenses, including with the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professional Board. They're paid through mental health prevention funding only for the time they actually spend in the classroom. They donate all their planning time and the course time necessary to keep up licenses under Ohio Chemical Dependency, even though some of our facilitators have doctorates in education, but that doesn't help in terms of facilitating under mental health prevention funding. So what is social emotional learning? Okay, the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning in Chicago, which is the largest research organization in the field, defines SEL, I'll call it SEL from now on, social emotional learning, as the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. Or as elementary educators call it, how to play nice in the sandbox. One only needs to look at the state of American governments and some governments around the world at various levels to understand a great need for SEL. If on your table is a handout, and on one side are the research to social emotional learning competencies. A nice color. This is from Castle. And on the other side are the social emotional learning skills, themes, whatever you like to call it, concepts, principles, they're called a number of things, those are the 5 themes we work on in order to achieve the competencies listed on this very colorful page from Castle. And if you look at those things, they are things, school psychologists sometimes refer to them as executive function skills. And, but you look at those things under self-awareness, self-management, critical things under self-management, which we need in order to provide leadership of any kind, whether it's in a classroom, in a government, in a business organization, in a religious group. You need self-discipline, self-motivation, goal-setting, organizational skills. So those are critical things, those are critical life skills, and the research has now affected even the state of Ohio, which has a 5-year plan, and the 4, and they specify equal domains in the plan. One of those 4 is social emotional learning, and they cite the research from Castle and from other groups. So yeah, if you review the handout, you'll see the things that we do. On the other side of the sheet, the affirmation, communication, cooperation, bias awareness, and appreciation of differences, and then creative conflict management. Classroom application, I'll give you an example. I'm teaching a couple of classes at one of our schools, and we basically try to do 3 classes for each theme. We have 5 themes. We usually spend 16 weeks doing an entire program in a school. And sometimes we can repeat that because we have 4 different curriculums, we have plenty of activities. We can repeat that again and again, and teachers constantly say, can you come back next semester? Can you come back next year? Give you an example that we're working on communication in the 2 5th grade classes which I work, and we divided the kids into triads. I like to use triads because if you have to make a decision, you can in a triad, you can, 2 votes to 1 gets a decision made. In this case, we were looking at it though in terms of listening skills. So one child was the speaker, 1 was the listener, and 1 was the observer. And the role of we gave the speaker a topic. The speakers talked for 1 or 2 minutes on the topic. The listeners used active listening skills, asking probing questions, maintaining eye contact, and doing the things that make effective listening, paraphrasing back, using iMessages. So the observer observed the process and then gave the other 2, the speaker and the listener, feedback on what they observed. And then they switched roles. So that was an activity, communication activity. We probably do 2 activities a week. In fact, that's one of the hardest things in the world was coming up with an activity today that we can do in under 15 minutes, because most of activities are 30 to 40 minutes. So that's you're talking about the handout? Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, some of our data that we've been working for 4 years, very active the last 3. We've worked with over 3,000 students on 130 classrooms. We're working predominantly in high poverty schools with high free and reduced lunch count, though these skills are obviously necessary for everybody. And even if you get great education from an Ivy League school, it doesn't necessarily mean, as we've seen, that you have the SEL competencies. So we're going to do this activity quickly here. It's and we have 3 people. We have a ruler, we have an advisor, and we have a narrator. So if I could get all 3 of those people ready to go here. This activity happens to focus on the final rule for fighting fair. This is Rule 6. The fighting fair rules are identify the problem, focus on the problem, attack the problem, not the person, listen with an open mind, treat a person's feelings with respect. And the last one is take responsibility for your actions. So we're going to start here. Okay. Yeah, if you could, yes, if you could come up here so we can pass the mics around. Or I can put them in front of you. You're the advisor. Yeah. Okay. And Dr. Weaver is the ruler. Okay.
And I'm a fair ruler.
Okay. Okay, we're going to start out with the narrator, and the two of you want to share these, Dr. Weaver. Okay. Ready?
I'm here.
Okay, actually, the next person is going to be. Go ahead.
The rulers sat with an advisor eating honey on puffed rice. As they ate, they leaned from the palace window and watched the street below. They talked of this and that. The ruler, not paying attention, let a drop of honey fall onto the windowsill.
Oh, sire, let me wipe that up.
Never mind. It's not our problem. The servants will clean it up later.
As the two continued to dine on their honey and puffed rice, the drop of honey slowly began to drip down the windowsill. At last it fell with a plop onto the street below. Soon a fly landed on the drop of honey and began his own meal. Immediately a gecko sprang from under the palace and with a flip of its long tongue swallowed the fly.
Oh, no.
But a cat saw the gecko and pounced. Then a dog sprang forward and attacked the cat.
Sire, there seems to be a cat and dog fight in the street. Should we call someone to stop it?
Never mind. It's not our problem.
All you have to say.
The two continued to munch their honey and puffed rice. Meanwhile, the cat's owner had arrived and was beating the dog. The dog's owner ran up and began to beat the cat. Soon the two were beating each other.
Sire, there are two persons fighting in the street now. Shouldn't we send someone to break this up?
The ruler lazily looked from the window.
Never mind. It's not our problem.
The friends of the cat's owner gathered and began to cheer him on. The friends of the dog's owner began to cheer her on as well. Soon both groups entered the fight and attacked each other.
Sire, a number of people are fighting in the street now. Perhaps we should call someone to break this up?
The ruler was too lazy even to look. You can guess what the ruler said.
Never mind. It's not our problem.
Now soldiers arrived on the scene. At first they tried to break up the fighting, but when they heard the cause of the fight, some sided with the cat's owner, others sided with the dog's owner. Soon the soldiers too had joined the fight. With the soldiers involved, the fight erupted into a civil war. Houses were burned down, people were harmed, and the palace itself was set afire and burned to the ground. The ruler and the advisor stood surveying the ruins.
Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps the drop of honey was our problem. That's because I'm a ruler from a gerrymandered kingdom.
The ruler was our problem.
That's a tale from Burma and Thailand, but it fits the it fits the situation. And it's very humorous. So there are processing questions afterwards. The obvious one, the first obvious, what's the earliest point at which this conflict could have been resolved?
Don't eat honey.
Don't eat honey. Okay. Or pick up. Wipe up the honey. Wipe up the honey. Don't leave the mess for somebody else to do. Okay. And what caused the conflict to escalate?
Lack of intervention.
Lack of intervention.
Ignoring it.
Neglect. Neglect.
Ignoring it.
Just ignoring the problem, pretend it wasn't there. Okay. And then, of course, you go on which of the rules for fighting fair could help solve this problem or this conflict, and it's obviously the take responsibility for your actions. And then another processing question is, how does this conflict compare to real life conflicts that you've seen? Yes.
Lack of communication and also lack of listening and active hearing.
Lack of communication, lack of active listening.
World War I.
World War I. Okay. Any other conflicts that kind of fit this real life conflict? Yes.
Yeah, lack of belief that everything matters.
Very good. Lack of belief that everything matters. And interconnectedness of items, and probably not being able to predict that interconnectedness, that escalation. As a school principal, I spent most of my time dealing with escalated problems, whether they were between students and teachers, students and parents, teachers and parents, and typically there was a point in which everybody, or at least one party, if not all the parties, decided, I have to win this. I have to get what I want, and of course that virtually never happens if you're operating in a win-lose situation, if that's your philosophy. Rob?
A belief that your lack of intervention in a brewing problem will not make a difference.
Okay. Belief that your lack of intervention in a problem will not make a difference. Yes?
Well, as Dylan said, don't follow leaders, watch the parking meters.
Repeated.
Yeah. If you don't follow leaders, watch the parking meters. Yes? Impeach the leader. Okay. However, this leader, finally, of course, by this time the palace was down, the Civil War had occurred. This leader did finally figure out that he actually had the responsibility. Yes?
Drawing wrong conclusions by not understanding the problem.
Very good, yeah. Drawing wrong conclusions by not understanding the problem. And the problem seems simple. The problem didn't even seem like a problem when the fly landed on the honey and the gecko got the fly. Well, that's just natural selection. But then it escalated, and of course the anticipation of the escalation was not there. But anyway, well, thank you very much for the ruler, the narrator, and the advisor for participating in that. That's just one of hundreds of activities we do in the areas of affirmation, communication, cooperation. Some of those challenging activities, of course, in bias awareness and appreciation of differences. Everybody has biases, and kids need to recognize that. We all grow up with biases. I grew up Irish Catholic family from New York City. My father was with the Atomic Energy Commission. He had been part of the Manhattan Project. And I grew up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. We had a perspective there. That was a little different from the perspective of, growing up part of my life in New York City as an Irish Catholic kid. So there were certain biases, but recognizing them and recognizing the value of the diversity that we have in our society is critical. The diversity on a committee, in fact, committees that are diverse tend to be the most effective. Ideas come out, perspectives vary enough to actually come up with a solution that represents the entire diversity of the group. So those things are, and then ultimately creative conflict management. Moving on, some of the data from the Center for Social Emotional Learning. Over the past 4 years, and I analyze the data every year, collected all from our surveys. We have to turn in surveys to Talbert House because the mental health prevention funding goes through Talbert House. We have to turn in our data results. We have outcomes, goals and outcomes that we have to report on. In fact, I just finished doing that a week or so ago. But I wanted to focus on the fact that when you look at the student survey summaries, and that's 6 statements and then 2 open-ended question areas, but a range of the student survey summaries indicate that anywhere between 84 and 95% of students responded strongly agree in all 6 areas, including the critical area. The one I use as an outcome is I learn things that will be helpful for me at school, home, and with friends. Because I want kids to understand that with what we do in the classroom, this is applicable everywhere. And so we want you to be practicing all the time, not just the hour that we're with you that week. So the lowest we've ever gotten is 84%, and those are high school kids, and they tend to be a little more critical than high school and middle school kids. They're a little more critical. But still, if I could got 84% agreement from my children when they were teenagers, I would have considered it a minor miracle. The teachers and school staff, 92 to 100%, indicate moderate to significant improvement in 10 categories, including some really important ones like problem behaviors, social interaction, problem solving and decision making, feelings about self-worth, self-esteem, positive attitudes, skills to resist negative peer influence, cooperation, and ability to manage anger. So they're witnessing at a 92 to 100% level moderate to significant improvement in those 10 areas. So we're very proud of those results, and I'm giving you kind of a summary of results over 3,000 students and 130 classrooms. Other programs that we do a peer mediation program, one that I started in Mount Healthy Impact called People Against Violent Environments, winner of 2 Ohio Best Practices Awards, the International Nestle Foundation Very Best in Teaching Award, and the Ohio School Conflict Management Award. We also school goal setting, and I want to share some results about the first student goal setting work that I did with a group of 31 8th grade boys who had pretty much laid waste to my school between 1st and 7th grade. A couple of teachers retired, a couple of others rethought whether or not they wanted to be teaching kids. One actually went into geriatrics. And so I got together with a group of the leaders of that class at summer, and then I gave them some data, and I'm sharing this data with you. The 31 boys had an aggregate, this is in 7th grade, and we're going to go into 8th grade, an aggregate of 17 quarters on honor roll and 37 quarters of academic ineligibility. Only 5 of those 31 boys had ever been on honor roll. So we implemented individual and group student goal setting. We sat down, we formed goals with each student. I looked at all their data for 7 years, had it in front of me. And then we did group goal setting. We kind of pitted the boys against the girls in that class who were a little more successful in the area of behaving themselves and doing well academically. So at the end of the year, we've moved from 17 quarters on honor roll in 7th grade to 49 quarters of honor roll in 8th grade. And only 10 quarters of academic ineligibility, from 37 down to 10. So basically they almost tripled the quarters of honor roll and reduced the quarters of academic ineligibility by more than 2/3. So that's what we were shooting for. Those are the results. Okay, when you combine best practices programs, when you combine pro-social or social emotional learning programs with peer mediation, with goal setting, it enhances the results. 100% poverty level school over a 9-year period that I had, we had a 42% reduction in discipline referrals, a 390% reduction in suspensions related to fights or assaults, went from 222 to 57, and nearly 100% reduction in violent altercations. We didn't have one violent altercation the last 3 years I was principal there. But again, we combined SEL and peer mediation, as well as some other national best practices that we were doing. But students were learning and applying SEL skills and resolving typical problems in mediation sessions with peers. So the concept of mediation became an automatic part of the process. This is how we solve problems. We needed to change school culture. If we, in combining social emotional learning, peer mediation, student goal setting, and 2 other national academic best practices, resulted in a high poverty school obtaining an excellent rating on the Ohio School Report Card. So as you combine these best practices together, and kids learn the social emotional learning skills, they learn how to solve conflicts, they learn how to address their academics. The academics improve because you're not wasting as much time on conflicts in the classroom. According to, and those are my experiences, according to a review of 260 research studies by CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, the outcomes associated with the 5 SEL competencies that you have there on your table, the self-awareness, self-management, etc. Okay, the results are increase in positive social behavior in all those studies, 11% increase in academic performance, decreases in conduct problems, 10% less emotional distress, enhanced ability to communicate and cooperate with others, enhanced leadership skills, reduction in violence due to a greater sense of community, and increased constructive response to conflict, and a positive spillover into family and community interactions. So the state of Ohio, as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 learning domains, equal, right there on top. Knowledge, foundation of skills, 1. Well-rounded content, 2. Leadership and reasoning, 3. Social emotional learning is 4. And the comment about social emotional learning, they've learned from all the research. Ohio Department of Education says life is a shared journey. Research shows that being part of a community improves life satisfaction and health. Living as part of a community involves understanding and importance of social interaction and personal feelings. Social emotional learning includes competencies like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, collaboration, empathy, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. It's like they're reading right off of CASEL's research. The elementary, they probably are, the elementary or the elements of social emotional learning give children the tools to become resilient and persistent in life. So we are now, the research has been going on now for 30 some odd years at least, and we are now at the point where we actually are, they're part of the 5-year plan for the state of Ohio, for the Ohio Department of Education. So 2019, 2024, you can see their plan on the website. I've got a couple pages here, and I'll close with just a comment. I've got a lot of comments from 9th graders. They tend to write even more. Though the one elementary school we just had, I looked at virtually every kid responded to the open-ended question. And so a lot of positive comments from that. But, one 9th grader says that without communication, your point will never get across. I love this program. I want to become a leader and branch out. So I will close with that. And if you have any questions or anything that I can answer, I will be happy to do my best. Yes?
I need a speaker, microphone.
Oh, okay.
Where's the other one?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay, then I won't hold it right. I was teaching in Cincinnati public schools in the 1980s, and Louise Stoller-Bengal came and did programs there. And I was then kind of just lost touch with her. And so I was really pleased when a couple of years ago she contacted us to see if we could get involved in this. And First Unitarian Church has been giving a little money to this new program,
yes.
And I think you came to our program last year. And I see there are 7 of us, 7 members here today, so.
Oh, good.
So we're really proud to be part of it.
And we're proud to be part of that too, and you've been helpful to us, the Carter Memorial Fund, to us, and yes.
How
how much do you do in public schools? And if you are in public schools, do you ever get any feedback from some religious groups about doing this with children?
We've been predominantly in public school. We just started working this semester for the first time with a Catholic school. No, we haven't heard anything from religious groups about what we're doing. I mean, this is practical stuff. I guess you could, intuit a religious sense to it, but I mean, this is basically basic learning. But we haven't heard anything.
I just asked because historically there have always been some concerns from some religious groups about teaching values in the schools.
Yeah, and that's true. But these are life skills, whether you call them values or not. Our response would be, these are life skills. Take these skills. Tell me which one you think nobody should be teaching or nobody should have, and we won't teach that one.
Yes. Do you ever have to worry about the fact that, considering we are a very poor city, I mean, we have more poverty among our children than almost more than only a few cities in the country rank with us in child poverty. And so you're speaking of running this program in very poor schools. Does it concern you at all that we in our city, which of course doesn't tax the wealth of the city, we're a rich city and a poor city.
Come here. It might be better. You're getting feedback.
I'm sorry. We are a rich city and a poor city. We don't tax wealth in order not to have so much poverty and to have good jobs and good housing and all that. But I wonder, we don't want to think, do we, that poverty is not so bad if you can teach kids to control their anger and stress from their lives in a poor family, poor neighborhood. I mean, do you worry about that sometimes? What the effect on our desire not to have poverty with so many angry kids? Of course they're angry. Their parents are angry, they're angry. So would I be if I lived that way. And I just don't think that doing workshops with them is all that much of an answer somehow. Though I'm sure they like the attention. It helps the kids. I mean, they like people to work with them and,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. We don't go in, we go in to help change the culture in the classroom and in a school. We make it very clear from the beginning when we go in. We meet with teachers and let them know that they are co-facilitators with us. So we have two facilitators in the classroom. The teacher participates in the activity, and then what we want to see happen is the teacher continues that concept throughout the rest of the week, and then each week we're building on it. So we don't when we get to conflict management. Well, conflict management necessitates affirmation, necessitates communication, necessitates being aware of biases and cooperation. So it's a spiral curriculum in which we're hitting all the competencies virtually every week, and we keep building on that. So we want the kids to practice. One of the first things I do when I go into the classroom is, okay, what did we do in this past week in this classroom that demonstrated good listening, that demonstrated affirmation? What did we do? And I ask the kids to say, okay, go over with me what activities you did that involved that, or what did you do personally, your relationship? Because we make it very, very clear. Our 16 weeks are in there. It may be an hour a week, but the other 33 hours that the kids are in that classroom and in that school, we want to see them practicing that. And we had that effect in the school I was out in Mount Healthy, where I would hear parents tell me about the student from my school were trying to mediate problems within the family, using the skills that they learned in mediation, the 6-step problem-solving process. So they were learning and taking it home. That's the ultimate thing. We want kids to apply it. Now, we can only encourage that, but for the most part, the classrooms we're in, given the high evaluations we're getting, classrooms we're in are pushing that too, because they would like to have classrooms in which learning is the number one effort in the classroom. Yes?
So you think that this would probably affect the level of crime and violence?
Well, I think I think when people have and work on those social emotional learning skills, it seems like that affects everything in their life. And I certainly would hope that one of the effects is, remember, responsible decision making. I mean, most violence, most crime involve some irresponsible decision making. So hopefully we're making an impact. We're starting from the ground up. We're working with elementary kids through high school kids. So we're trying to make a difference there. And they will all be adults someday, and hopefully they will enter adulthood with a few more SEL competencies than perhaps some of us had growing up, when basically, it was our parents. If our parents didn't teach us those things, they probably weren't learned at all. Yeah.
Bob, my question concerns conflict, because I'm always fascinated by conflict in many social situations. And what I see as conflict here is you and I both know how hard teachers in Mount Healthy worked, particularly making sure that their scores were as high as they could be on state proficiency tests, statewide testing. And I'm sure that's the same in all other public school systems, certainly in Ohio. My guess would be, well, first of all, social skills are not measured on statewide testing. There's no metric for that. And so what happens is the teachers that I knew were totally focused on the academics, and they weren't allowed time to do programs such as this, social skills. My guess would be that you may have had some conflict with either teachers or the administration who felt a social program is taking time away from necessary academics. So I would ask you, did you experience any of that?
Occasionally I would hear that, but I think when I was at Frost, which was from a standpoint of having half a square mile neighborhood, 4,600 police calls a year and a half square mile. There was conflict there, but very little, because I think most of the staff there recognized that our students needed to develop we called them pro-social skills back then. And some of the leaders on my staff, Susan Heitner and Debbie O and some of the other people really, pushed us and were behind it. And New Burlington, Rob left as I was coming in there, but at New Burlington we focused on that. We did not have the peer mediation program. We focused on peer mediation, the social emotional learning skills, and other things. And over the 6 years I was there, even though we gathered another 135 kids from the lower performing schools in the district, we wound up as an excellent rated school because we were focusing on everything. We instituted 3 academic national best practices. We instituted peer mediation, SEL component, and we worked on it, and everybody was very focused. And there were probably some non-believers or people that feel like, well, it took away an hour of academic time. But if kids develop the skills to focus, cooperate, and concentrate better, and cooperate with the teacher and with other students, you have more productive time. And so I never sensed a lot of resistance, and fortunately, possibly because I had been a principal for 100 years at that point. I mean, I was a principal 38 years in Ohio, so I had already been a principal 21 years when I walked into Mount Healthy. I think the central office let me run it on my own, as long as they were seeing results, and we did see results. Nobody got in my way,
Just
which I
wanted to-
appreciated.
yeah.
So,
Just wanted to clarify a little bit.
yes.
Character education, which definitely this falls underneath character education, is part of the social studies standards in the state of Ohio. But the problem we have is that there's been so much focus on taking the test and doing the reading, the math. Sometimes social studies gets pushed off to the side and doesn't get taken care of. So that's why this new state strategic plan, which has social and emotional learning as part of, and 21st century skills, which social and emotional learning, part of those 21st century skills, maybe we'll get more of this done and more focus in the classroom, because it's not taking away from education, it's enhancing.
So there's 5 hands up. We're after one, but we'll go to them in order that I saw them.
So my question is, what happens, or what have you done in cases where these social emotional skills that are taught, when they are either not reinforced or are actively discouraged in the home? For instance, I've heard from kids who they see their parents fighting with other parents in the school parking lot at drop-off time. So I'm just wondering if you've come up with things like that and how you've dealt with it.
Well, yeah, I've had 2 specific situations in my career, and I'll talk about the most recent one. When I was at Cross, there were 7 families that were constantly in conflict, and so Jim Friedhoff, my school resource officer, who was the school resource officer of the year in Ohio and in the country back in 2000, Jim and I sat down one evening at 7 p.m. and met for 2 hours with these 7 families. We had 21 people come in and join us, kids and parents. So when you become aware of that, obviously as a principal, I felt a responsibility, because I really believe in social emotional learning and peer mediation, and mediation with adults too. And so I had the opportunity to do that, and Jim and I worked with those families, and we came to some agreements. You can't do that with every conflict that occurs. You take the opportunity when it's given to you, and if people are willing to come in. I did a similar situation in when I was at Mansfield St. Peter's. We had a community up there, an African-American community, that we had families in there that had been fighting for generations. So one night, we asked everybody to come in and join us, and let's get, what is the fighting about? And of course, it's like most conflicts, when you try to spell them out, and particularly ones that have gone on for, say, 30 years with families, then you find that it's almost silly, and everybody sits there, and if they're being rational, they're saying that. And we came to some fantastic agreements, and after that, those families, the kids were not bringing the problem into school, and the families were getting on better. I kept hearing more and more positive things. So I think where you have the opportunity as a principal or a leader in any situation, and this was the school resource officer too, so it was demonstrating there was a real interest in resolving conflicts, say in the Seven Hills neighborhood in Mount Healthy, and both the principal and the school resource officer were willing to come in and spend an evening talking about them. And it sends a message that you care about the community that your school building is in. So, yes.
Hi, my oldest is in 4th grade, and we were talking with parents of a 5th grader, and they told us recently that our high school has a policy where if someone hits somebody else and the person who got hit walks away, only the person who started it gets suspended. But if the person who got hit hits back, they're both going to be suspended. And this other parent said, well, I'm going to back up my kid, and I don't care if he gets suspended, I'm going to tell him to hit him back, and I'm going to support him at home during that suspension. And this is just a completely new policy to me that I'm unfamiliar with, and I wonder if that's common, and if you could comment on the no hit back policy.
Yeah, and I agree with that. If you walk away and behave responsibly and go to a teacher or come to me as principal, whatever, yeah, I think you behave responsibly, and the person who initiated the physical contact, but it might be disciplined. Now, I'm not one of those, I was never one of those principals, and I drive other principals crazy of, well, they, first event, 3 days suspension, second event, 6, and 9, then recommendation to expel. To me, let's find the problem here, and let's get the solution. There might still be disciplinary action, but there's no good at suspending a kid, having them come back, and you have not solved the problem. So the first thing you need to do is solve the problem. I had a similar situation in one of our schools, well, Mount Healthy South, walked in, 2 kids had been in a fight the day before. They were supposed to be suspended, but they came back to school, and they were going into one of our SEL classes. I sat down with them, we mediated the problem out in the hallway. The darn problem started in 3rd grade. They identified a time in well, this isn't unusual. And with girls, quite honestly, and I raised, it might be 5 years ago, I was shocked that boys remembered anything that happened the year before or 2 years before. Quite honestly, girls remember an offense, from 1st grade, and they're sitting in 8th grade. They're still stewing about it, and which is. But I've done a lot of counseling. I coached girls basketball for 21 years, and so I've had a lot. And I raised all daughters, so and female dogs too. So, but the dogs were really easier.
Yeah, Bob, I did a lot of this when I was working, and one of the neatest things, the Lung Association had a program for tobacco education. I trained the 10th graders at Walnut, in a health class, this 6-part program, and they did it for the 8th graders. And I thought it was so neat because they had to really learn it in order to teach it. And I was thinking if you could do something like that, you might get more bang for your buck too. Have you ever heard of that model?
Yeah, I have, and in fact, over at Aiken, they have older high school kids working with 7th graders in a similar situation, and we're working with SEL with the Wings program at Aiken, and they have that too. Older kids learning how to mediate, learning SEL skills, and then working with the younger kids who tend sometimes 7th graders will listen more to a high school junior or senior than they'll listen to an adult.
Right. I wanted to ask about the financing. I know our little contribution isn't supporting this group, but where are the finances from?
Well, in fact, on the table, there are envelopes with information about us, and I encourage you to take it, read my letter in there, and some of which you've already heard in this presentation. Read my letter, and if you feel it's a worthy organization to support, we would certainly appreciate your sending in a donation, or you can go on our website and actually make the donation through the website.
That's where all of it comes from?
That and mental health prevention funding. We're the largest prevention agency of Talbot House, and about about half of our budget, maybe a little over half of our budget, comes from prevention funding. That levy that just passed, last year or the year before, and without donations, I've worked on some grants, some foundation grants. We haven't gotten a major one yet. We've come close to a few of them, so I need to keep developing my grant writing skills. But yes, we would appreciate if you take those envelopes on the table, and if you can feel compelled to make a donation to us, we would greatly appreciate it, or pass it on to someone else who might feel the same way and give them the information. Yes?
I just wanted to say I was invited to join the board a year and a half ago, so I'm a proud board member, and in addition to taking the envelope and filling it with some money and sending it back, I know there are, in this group, a lot of people are always asking what they can do, and there are retired teachers and social workers here. If you feel like you might like to participate as a facilitator, you could contact Bob. He's got his business cards up here too. So that's another way you can contribute and actually make some money.
Yeah. Yeah, if you would like to join us as a facilitator, our training coordinator will spend some time with you and train you. And also, if you're interested in our board, come to a board meeting and take a look at it and say, oh, you might say, well, this is a board I'd like to be part of. We've got some pretty knowledgeable people on board, so we certainly would appreciate that. I got a stack of business cards up here. Feel free to take one with you. And any other questions?
We have it for today. Thank you, Bob. You have really made this brought us to a wonderful day today. Thank you. This is really important stuff. And I keep wondering what my daughter's doing, and I hope she's doing stuff like this. My daughter just got a wonderful job in the state of California doing something, and I know it has to do with schools and whatever, and I'm going to find out what's going to happen. Thank you so much for coming. People, you have been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. We have one more thing happening today, and that is a small gift exchange. If you want to stay and be here for the gift exchange, please come up to this table here, and we will make it happen. So, come on up. You may speak to Bob Kelly. Thank you. Come on up. I have presents here, and if you have a present to exchange, please come on up.